Well, this is another exciting episode, and I mean excitement when I talk to you kids, of Live from My Office. And if you're watching on YouTube, the face on the other section of this screen is the great Paul Douglas, a brilliant, brilliant scientist and a very goofy man. Hello, Paul.
Hello, Stephen.
Nice to talk to you
see
again.
you. Thank you.
I
Thanks
must
for
ask
having me
you.
on.
I must ask you again. We encourage people to go to the YouTube channel, Live from My Office. Is that the Studio 54 disco ball above your head there in your space?
It is. I was able to salvage that from Studio 54, where I had some of my best moments disco dancing back in the 70s. It brings back amazing memories. I've converted it into a Doppler,
Ah,
so the neighbors
done.
won't get pissed off. But
well done.
yeah, we're scanning the neighborhood right now.
Oh, nice. Well done. Now, each of those are tiny video screens or tiny cameras. I think of, the Sphere in Vegas, and that's a miniaturized sphere of sorts. Or do you just put tiny entertainers in there?
It's a death orb. I can.
Oh, okay, that works too.
Yeah.
So before we begin with the important questions, I just want to tell you a quick story. So the family, well, not the family, my wife and I, and a couple other couples went to Hawaii in March and spent a couple weeks there. We also were on Kauai. We took a helicopter tour,
Nice.
in and out of the valleys and things. It was great. And the helicopter pilot talked about Jurassic Park and how his father had flown for those helicopter shots in Jurassic Park and also Magnum PI, and how he flies whenever there's, helicopter shots needed now. And those guys are great and all that. But of course, it brings up the fact that you turned down a path that you easily could have taken as a movie star in the original Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
And came back to your love of science and the weather. So tell people what you did for Jurassic Park.
Well, when I was younger and way more foolish, I started a three-dimensional weather graphics company called Earthwatch because I was bored with the weather graphics I was using on TV, Channel 11 here in the Twin Cities. And I mean, they all looked the same, and I wanted something different. And I went to an AMS, American Meteorological Society convention talk, and a Japanese gentleman gave a video presentation, a concept of three-dimensional weather, and he was flying through valleys with simulated rain and lightning, and it was like a space shuttle view. It was, Steve, it was as if Walt Disney
Couldn't have been
was
cooler.
doing the weather. And it just blew me away. And he got a standing ovation. Every TV meteorologist was on their feet, clapping and hooting. I went up to him and I said, "This is great. I'd love to use this for the Twin Cities for my viewers." And he laughed at me and he said, "This requires a Fujitsu supercomputer. Do you have $5 million?" And I said, I think I remember saying, "Will you take a check?" So anyway, he pissed me off. And I went back.
So he goes from being this brilliant performance artist of this incredible science to a dick. And but it made you mad enough that you went back and found your own guy.
The third developer I went to, there was trial and error, as there usually is. He was able to turn the vision into a reality for a fraction of the cost and we licensed these graphic systems from Silicon Graphics. At the time, you needed some pretty heavy iron, a pretty significant video processing to be able to do three-dimensional visualizations where you put in the track and it creates this 3D perspective, kind of like looking out the window of the space shuttle.
Sure.
And I wanted that. And it took a couple of years, but he was able to make that happen. And we launched it in the Twin Cities called Earthwatch. Somehow news got back to Spielberg's company, Amblin Entertainment, that there were these crazy guys trying to do 3D weather. And I got a call from one of his representatives who wanted to know if we'd be interested in doing graphics. And we said, okay, yeah, sure. I had just read the book, Jurassic Park, and so I knew the plot line.
Oh, they told you what the movie was at that point.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So we created these visuals. We went out to Universal Studios for the filming to do what Spielberg wanted. My chief developer, my partner, the guy that created this, I was just the idea guy, but he actually created this. But he had to hide under one of the tables in the control room and keep hitting the space bar to make it do the flight path that Spielberg wanted. But
Well, that's fascinating. So he had a monitor under the table,
yeah,
and he's hiding under the table.
yes,
And he's got to have this impeccable timing to
Yes.
space bar at the right time.
yes. So we did that, and I had my 15-minute brush with fame. I had a chance to chat with Steve. Steve, may I call him Steve?
Sure.
Mr. Spielberg.
And you had a cameo.
Not in Jurassic Park, in Twister.
Oh, that's right. That was Twister. You're right.
Yeah.
But that's what happens. Hollywood typecast for you. You know, once you're a weather genius in one movie, you got to be a weather genius in all of them. It's the same way with me in porn.
I'm going to have nightmares, but okay.
Get in line.
Yeah,
but
so we did the graphics for Jurassic Park. The movie comes out, it's a big hit, and you know we can see our scenes, that the control room scenes, and we used imagery from Hurricane Andrew, which hit just south of Miami. I think it was 1992, and we draped that over this three-dimensional topography of Jurassic Park, and we did all these different flight paths. And Steve liked it. Later, a year or two later, they called us back and said, "Hey, we're making a little movie about twisters. We'd love to use your graphics in that." And I'm like, "Sure." And I'm very naive. I assumed they would pay us. Yeah, I had a little cameo, but I walk in to this barn in Ames, Iowa, filming of these control room scenes. They said, "Hey, Paul, you want a line in the movie?" And I'm thinking, romantic scene with Helen Hunt,
yeah, right. Love scene.
like
Yeah.
maybe a shower scene of some
Yeah.
sort. And they're like, "No, they're restraining order."
Well, that's what happened with me on Grumpy Old Men, but my shower scene was with Walter Matthau.
Okay, you have the freedom to do that. It's ill-advised.
So you get the union money for the line in the movie, but you must have gotten millions for the technology.
No. Yeah, I still get paychecks from Twister
Yeah.
for my one line. "Hey, Bryce, you better come here and take a look at this," which I
Yeah.
think is the highlight of the movie. Nobody
No
else
question.
did.
No question.
But I got a check once for 1 cent,
Yeah, I still get those.
and I framed that. This is God tapping you on the shoulder, reminding you you are not a big deal.
Yeah. Well, I did like 5 movies. They all still pay. And over the course of the 30 years, because I was doing these in the early 90s, and we're talking about the same time frame for the 2 movies you were in, and I still get checks for those. Now, all in, I don't know, 50 grand maybe over 30 years.
Oh, wow. No, I wasn't
But
anywhere
now-
close to that.
Now, $1. You know, $1.10, $1.12.
Well, what can I say? I mean, you didn't do it for the money. You did it for the fame and the adulation.
I'm just surprised Clooney didn't call us about Ocean's 11 initially, because I think we would have been great. You
Yeah.
could have been the weather guy, and I could have been the guy valet parking at the Venetian. I'm not sure what my role would have been. No, I would have been the muscle. I would have been the guy behind the guy, making sure nobody hurt Clooney.
Yeah, I can see that. The weirdest part of the story with Spielberg is that at one point we tried to send his company an invoice for all the work we had done, hundreds of hours, thinking they would pay us. And I got a call back and said, "Paul, we're not going to pay you." And I'm like, "Wait, I didn't realize you guys were a nonprofit. I mean,
Right.
we invested a lot of time and energy into giving you what you wanted." He said, "No, Paul, we're still not going to pay you. Here's what we will allow you to do. You can send out a press release with your name and Steven Spielberg's name. that will be enough. And I remember my partner was really pissed. He wanted to tear me apart because it's like we've wasted hundreds of hours on this boondoggle. And I'm like, well, maybe it'll help from a marketing standpoint. If it's good enough for Spielberg, it's good enough for a TV station in Des Moines. And that was the case. We used that to promote Earthwatch. Steven Spielberg, Twister, Jurassic Park.
And I'm sure it did turn into a lot of sales, right? It must have.
It did. It turned into hundreds of sales worldwide. But I remember at the time just being flummoxed, just gobsmacked that, wait, they're not going to pay us for the work we did?
Well, where would they come up with the money?
It all it all turned out just fine, but it was kind of a surreal experience getting to spend some time with Steve.
There is a there is a theory that the only way you get to be that rich is to not give money to anyone if you don't have to. And there's some great Michael Jordan stories here that are similar to it. One involves a piano company where he and his wife wanted baby grand pianos. By the way, Michael, if you're watching, unsubstantiated rumor, feel free to sue me. But two baby grands brought to the house, and they were not returned. And the older gentleman that owned the place said, "Where's the money?" Because his son, apparently someone else who was running the store, had, been starstruck and gave the Jordans the pianos, and then same deal, invoice them and get the money. And they were told, well, you can tell people that Michael Jordan has two of your pianos. He sent a truck that day with two guys to take the pianos. The Chicago way.
Yes. Tough justice.
All right, my friend.
I had not heard that.
I want to talk about this weather we're living in, this end of days Armageddon weather we're living in. And let's go maybe a little more calendar specific than current. We have not had a white Christmas in Chicago in years. And it feels almost as if winter has moved where November, December are actually rather mild, regularly in the 40s. And then January, mid-January into March, pretty miserable. Kind of the old November, December. April, incredibly wet. And May, cold. As a matter of fact, we're recording this on May 22nd, and it's 4 degrees. No, it's about 50 for the high today, 50, low 50s. So is there literally a shift in seasons going on?
Yeah, there is. The atmosphere is warming, no question of that. So are the oceans, but it's uneven, it's lumpy, and we're seeing some shifts in how the jet stream behaves. There seems to be more weather whiplash going from cold to hot to cold to hot. And scientists have been able to quantify that it's real. It's not your imagination, that we are seeing more crazy swings in temperature and in moisture. The wets are getting wetter, the dries are getting drier, and it's increasingly unusual to get average weather, normal weather. And so, yeah, we're seeing those changes in the jet stream, and in terms of no snow for Chicago in the winters, I mean, it's a trend. We're warming up. Chicago is going to have more of a climate similar to Kansas City or St. Louis or Nashville as the years advance, and more.
So it is plottable.
This rain.
The trend is plottable, and it will continue. Now, you're in Minneapolis, St. Paul.
Yeah.
Are you seeing a similar thing?
Yeah, we still have winter. It still gets cold, but we don't get the volume of Arctic air. The week after week below zero, which was typical as recently as the 70s. We get a few. Now zero is breaking news, and the local stations lead with it.
Well, when I spent 6 years there. That's when you and I became friends, and there were 2 weeks in December where the high never got above zero. You could count on it. You could plan on it every year. That's gone, apparently.
It is. We're seeing 50s and 60s in December. And again, we still get Arctic slaps, but the Arctic air isn't as cold and it doesn't stick around as long. So you can see it. If you just plot the number of sub-zero lows since 1970, we're seeing fewer, and that's not just the Twin Cities. It's all of the northern tier cities. So things
So it's
are
a
warming.
symptom of climate change?
Yes.
So it is dangerous in the big picture packaged together with all the other issues we have with climate change. It's not just to get used to it, things change.
When people say, well, it's cyclical, I don't know. We've almost doubled the amount of CO2 in the atmosphere, and that corresponds with a warming trend. It's pretty cut and dry. I mean, science has never settled, but there's a mountain of evidence that it is warming up. It's us. There are solutions. Today, those solutions, we've moved the goalposts back with some of the changes that we're seeing at a federal level right now. And by just ignoring climate change or not using the term climate change, it's not going to make it go away.
Yeah, it's idiotic.
Now we'll be flying blind, and we're going to have these crazy billion-dollar disasters every few days. And FEMA may or may not show up to help communities suffering. That's already going on right now in Kentucky. Look at Kentucky and St. Louis. The mayor pleading for, where's FEMA? We need help. Where are the reinforcements?
They didn't even show up, right?
No. So I'm perpetually paranoid, but the cuts at NOAA, the cuts at research, the staffing issues at these local weather service offices, at some point it's going to bite people in the ass.
Well, that's a perfect segue into the other topic that is the most topical, I suppose, and that is the need for weather forecasting to get on an airplane and fly from here to there, and to have accurate, current, proper forecasting. You don't have enough, the air traffic controllers, having one guy named Phil having to handle 180 flights, a little crazy, right? But if if the pilots can't can't get a forecast without clicking on their weather app on their phone, that seems problematic as well.
It does. We are degrading the best weather service in the world. We have the most severe weather of any nation on earth, Steve.
Is that right?
We probably deserve a weather service that's up to the task.
No kidding.
By cutting 10, 20% of the staff, they're shifting people around. If they don't have enough staff in one office, they temporarily bring in more staff. You're robbing Peter to pay Paul. It's like applying duct tape to everything and hoping it all works out. And maybe it will. But we should not assume that you're going to get the tornado warning 20 minutes before the tornado rips through your neighborhood. You're not going to get the flood warning before water starts lapping at your feet.
So we take all the technology that we've developed and are rightfully using in other areas, and we're not using it in an area to keep people safe. Because what you're talking about is turning the clock back to an era where we didn't have the stuff we have now. We don't have the safety because it's a choice being made, not because it's not available.
Correct. And by cutting research, it's not just cutting staffing, but cutting research. Scientists, we assume that the weather forecasts will continue to improve. We assume that each year we'll get a little bit better at predicting hurricanes and floods and tornadoes. We can't make those assumptions now because some of the leading scientists who focused on cutting-edge research, trying to make things better and more accurate and more reliable, those people are gone, and they're not coming back. And this could set NOAA back 10, 20 years.
You know more about...
but I worry about what we're doing. It's a self-inflicted wound.
Yeah, and I suppose, I'm just spitballing here, but if somebody just gave me a new $400 million airplane and I didn't have a proper weather forecast to fly it, I wouldn't be any safer than the guy in the Cessna.
I think we should use that $400 million 747 to fly into hurricanes.
That would be fantastic.
I think turning that into a Hurricane Hunter plane is the best thing I've heard.
Plus, Trump's all about saving money. All about saving money, He uses the lowest quality gold paint in the Oval Office. He's gone cubic zirconia wherever he can. But he could combine business trips with hurricane hunting.
I think there's something there. And look,
Yeah.
I just
You almost
shake my
dropped
head.
into an evil scientist voice there. I think there's something there.
I don't know. We deserve, look, whatever you're doing in life, you want the best tools.
Of course.
Whether you're building a cabinet or fixing your toilet, I mean, you want the best tools. And we've had the best tools, but right now we are purposefully dulling those tools and making them less effective. And so, weather balloons, there are about 100 weather balloons that are launched twice a day all across the United States, Alaska, Puerto Rico. But as many as a dozen of these sites have cut back on weather balloons. And you say, well, who cares? It's just a balloon rising up through the atmosphere. Meteorologists use that data to determine if the atmosphere is ripe for tornadoes or
Kind of
flooding.
important.
Yeah, it's very important. The atmosphere is 12 miles thick. You need a measurement through the entire atmosphere. And it's not just a minor inconvenience. You're putting low octane fuel into the engine and then wondering why the performance has gone down. So if you put junk in, you get junk out. And so I'm not alone. A lot of meteorologists concerned about the accuracy of weather forecasts in general, but especially on the big weather days, the big tornado days in Chicago,
Yeah.
the flood situations.
We're just getting into that season now.
So, and there are theories that, well, they're just paving the way for the private sector to go in and do it much more economically, much more efficiently. I have a private business, and I don't know of any private weather company on the planet that could do what NOAA does. I mean, with a constellation of weather satellites.
Maybe if it could, it would take years to get to that point.
Yes, it
And
would.
all of the planes that fly now need proper weather now.
Yes,
all
they
of
do.
the, all of the people that live in Tornado Alley or wherever severe weather happens, which is everywhere now, we need data now. So if you want to shift to that, if you want to shift to the private model, great. But understand that it's going to take time to get there. It's not going to happen because you want it to happen today. You orange freak. I'm sorry. Was that was me? That came out.
Well, the Doge boys, I mean, my personal opinion, it's a classic case of ready, fire, aim.
Yep.
They didn't do the research. Instead of using a chainsaw, maybe a scalpel would have been appropriate. And by everything I hear, my contacts at NOAA, they were underfunded and understaffed before all this happened last year. They were holding it together with duct tape and chewing gum. So now they're scrambling, trying to meet their mission of keeping Americans safe, but they're doing so with one hand tied behind their back.
You just got back from a trip to Europe. Two-part question, but the first part is: are you comfortable flying? And I'm not just talking about what's going on in Newark. Are you less comfortable flying now because of what you know about the weather circumstances, but also about ATC?
I think, and I've flown a lot over the years. It's safer than driving, at least it has been. But yeah, I'm a little more uncomfortable, and I sure as heck wouldn't fly into Newark anytime soon, based on what we're hearing. But it wasn't limited to Newark. There were outages in Denver. So I think it's a classic case of we don't know what we don't know. We don't know if our individual flight is being impacted. The pilot doesn't come on the radio and tell the passengers, hey, we just lost contact with ground control.
Yeah.
So, yeah, again, we shouldn't make assumptions, and cutting into some of these government systems for the sake of expediency and trying to find savings. I think we're not just cutting into fat, we're cutting into bone.
Well, and the Musk disaster, which is exactly what it was, never had to happen. because he paid $250 million or so of his own money for access, and the access to go in with his idea of how to run government agencies has caused incredible pain and disastrous circumstances, which we're going to pay for. So I don't know if it takes a plane falling out of the sky or, a series of horrific weather events. Actually, saying that out loud, it will take a plane crash. God forbid.
Probably.
But it'll take a plane crash because politicians will write off weather. They'll continue to write it off. They write off what they don't understand. They'll say, well, it happens. What are you going to do? It's weather. But when planes start falling out of the sky, that's when they'll have to pay attention.
I think there's merit to your argument, and it's sad, but that is often the case. People don't focus attention until there's a tragedy, and you may very well be right. I hope you're not.
Me too.
But
I've been wrong once or twice.
If you're if you're not just a little bit paranoid about what's happening right now, you're not paying attention.
Yeah, I agree. And I completely agree. All right, so last week, again, this is being recorded on May 22nd. Last week, my family, we were all gathered in upstate New York, where I grew up, for a family funeral. Brother-in-law passed, sadly, but while we're there, the phone never stops. And suddenly there's an alert on my phone that a dust storm is approaching Chicago. I checked to see if the date was set to 1932, if Henry Fonda was nearby, if there were grapes, if there was wrath, and none of that applied. How is it possible that we had a dust storm in Illinois a week ago? And where did that come from? Is it an anomaly?
It is an anomaly. It's rare, not totally unprecedented. On rare occasions, Chicagoland can in fact see dust storms. This particular event on May 16th was triggered by severe thunderstorms over central Illinois, and these storms produced outflow, a downdraft of rain-cooled and hail-cooled air, which triggered winds of 60 miles an hour. So the origination was this cluster of storms upwind over central Illinois. That whipped that gust front. It wasn't a tornado, it was straight line winds, but those winds were blowing at 60 miles an hour away from the thunderstorm. You can think of it as severe thunderstorm exhaust. And that whipped up these clouds of dust because it's been so dry, downstate.
So all that farmland soil gets picked.
Yes.
And then turns into a giant cloud, not a tornadic situation,
Nope.
just a giant cloud.
Just a giant cloud, yeah. The dust being hurled downwind towards Chicago. So, yeah, it must have been apocalyptic, right? Not the kind of thing you expect, kind of a freak weather event. But we're seeing more of these freak weather events.
Well, wouldn't you say the fires in California were a product of a freak weather event because of those winds? I mean, those winds exist in California all the time, and there is literally a fire season. But to combine those two, that was unusual. Yes.
Yes, fire season used to be 6 months, 7 months in California. Now it's year round, and we had hurricane force winds, sustained hurricane force winds. I don't care what kind of equipment you have, choppers, airplanes. First of all, a lot of aircraft can't fly in those conditions. It's unsafe for the pilots. They're trying to keep the pilots alive. So at the height of the, apocalypse in Malibu and Palisades, there was nothing they could do but watch it burn. And I don't care what kind of equipment you have, how many firefighters, if you have sustained winds of 60, 70 miles an hour with gusts over 100, there's nothing you can do.
And that will happen again.
I think it will. It's people building in areas they probably shouldn't be building. And the fact that, we're heating up the atmosphere, which is drying out California. There's more dry scrub, more ammunition, more fuel for these fires. So I think it's a trend, and we're seeing fires in places that don't normally get fires. Even in the spring, we've had fires here in Minnesota up over the Arrowhead.
Right.
Tens of thousands of acres engulfed north of Duluth, and it's a little weird for May, even here. So,
And the discussion continues to go on in places like Florida and the Carolina coast of your homes have been destroyed. You can rebuild. We're not going to insure them, but you can rebuild. But that seems like that is a trend headed in the very wrong direction, that the coastlines are not safe. And if you're rich enough to build and lose a home, good for you. But people are in great danger there. I mean, the storm that hit the Gulf a year ago, they hadn't had a direct hit off the Gulf in that manner. And I don't know what I was told, 75, 100 years, whatever the case was. So Mother Nature's doing exactly what she wants, and she's pissed.
yeah. She's these climate-fueled disasters. The hurricane would have hit anyway, even without all of the greenhouse gas that's accumulating, that's man-made. But the fact that the oceans are warmer, and you can measure that, that's not a model, that's measuring the temperature of the ocean. Seas are rising, you can measure that. There's more fuel. There's more water vapor. You warm things up a few degrees, basic physics. The atmosphere can hold more water. And what's ironic with Asheville and that tragedy is that Asheville...
How do you have a hurricane in a mountain?
Yeah.
I mean, that was biblical.
Yeah, but it's meteorological too. It's called orographic lifting. If you have wet air rising up and over a mountain chain... And I know some people will say, well, they're not real mountains. Well, they're pretty big hills. And the atmosphere, the air rising up and over those hills, it's like wringing out a wet dishcloth. You're just training a fire hose of moisture. And what's ironic, Steve, is that many people moved to Asheville because they thought it was a climate haven.
Right.
They thought they could escape the rising seas and the hurricanes, but, we're discovering over time, the hard way, that nobody is totally immune. Certainly the southern U.S., much more impacted by the effects of a warming atmosphere. Supersized hurricanes. The hurricanes are strengthening increasingly before hitting land. It's because the oceans are warmer, and more wildfires over the western U.S. and the Southwest. So the northern tier, a little more insulated. Chicago will be in better shape than Nashville or Savannah or Hilton Head. But, nobody's immune. There's no place on the planet that won't feel the effects of a warming atmosphere and these supersized storms that are wetter, consistently wetter.
Yeah, and you had the foresight years ago to write a book with another gentleman who's, I apologize, I've forgotten his name, but about jobs that can get created, that this doesn't have to be a wholly negative story, that we can transition the economy to be a climate change favorable economy. The green economy is a real thing. It's not an AOC thing, and it needs to be developed. Matter of fact, what is the title of that book, and can I still get it?
Caring for Creation. Yeah. Caring for Creation.
It's still available.
I think so. I believe it is.
You got a couple copies in the trunk if it's not?
I got a truckload of them.
But it's important. It's important stuff. And you've talked openly about, and Tom Skilling, the great Tom Skilling in Chicago as well, you've talked openly about your transition from being a skeptic about climate change initially to understanding fully on how dangerous this is. Skilling's the same way, same path. And I think so many meteorologists and meteorological science minds have gone the same way. There's very few people who are legitimate scientists who look at this and go, let's see what happens.
It's good to be skeptical about everything. Science is organized skepticism. The biggest skeptics on the planet are scientists, and the fact that you have thousands of climate scientists all agreeing says something. I still think experts matter. I'm not an expert on
Same
plumbing
here.
or fixing my electrical system. I bring in experts. I don't try to do it myself. I don't rely on some Yahoo on X giving me advice. I go to trusted sources, and that would be these scientists who are all saying the same thing. But
Yeah,
yeah,
because I've said it as well. I said, if I get on an airplane, I don't knock on the cockpit door and say, I just saw a video on YouTube. You guys take a seat in the back. I got this.
I got this.
I've got a bad left knee that needs to be replaced. I'm not going to go into surgery and go, why don't we save some money and head over to Home Depot? Grab a saw, see if we can do it there.
But you're right. When it comes to medicine, most people, not all, most people want the best doctors and the best
Right.
treatments and are happy to soak up science
Right.
and say, okay, what should we be doing to cure this cancer or whatever it is? But with climate change, because it impacts the weather, I think somehow it gives the message that, oh, we're all experts. I can look out the window.
No, good. Makes me
Yeah,
crazy.
I watched a few YouTube videos, so I know as much as the world's climate scientists. No, you don't.
No, you don't.
Take a seat.
Yeah, take a seat and shut up while you're at it. All right, last piece of this, and I'll just tell people we do a new version of this podcast called Anything But Politics that drops early in the week. And Paul's graciously agreed to stick around for another 3 hours and a wardrobe change to be a guest on that, where we talk about anything but politics, thus the name. See what I did there?
I like that.
So we'll get to that. But the politics piece of this is important because nothing happens in a vacuum. The damage that's occurring now at the hands of whoever is running the country is real. And you and I won't live long enough to feel the full effects of it, but our grandchildren will.
Yeah.
And it's offensive to me on a million levels, but the worst of which is to know that my 9, 5, and 1-year-old grandchildren are going to have to pay the price for these asshats and the stuff they're doing now. And the cowards that aren't standing up to it and protecting the country, which, by the way, is their job. So we're a long way away from the midterm elections, but you can haunt your elected reps now, and you can organize now. And God willing, you can run now. Because the system is broken, we need to fix it. It's not going to get fixed overnight, but maybe you're the next person to be in Congress to do the right thing. So what should people in regards to the weather and climate tell their elected reps by phone, by email, in regards to this story?
I think they should reach out at a local, state, and national level. Your U.S. senators, your Congress people, your local officials as well, and remind them that a functional, working National Weather Service shouldn't be open for debate. That the number one thing government can do is protect its citizens. And by making these cuts, these haphazard, stupid cuts in many cases, they're putting all of us at risk. And so I hope it doesn't take a few tragedies where the warnings didn't go out for people to wake up, but make your voices heard. Call your representatives. We can hire, some of these people are gone probably forever. Some of the experts. In fact, there's many who are moving overseas. A lot of these atmospheric scientists have been snatched up by other countries. So I think we deserve the best weather service in the world. But, there's a lot going on right now, a lot of dysfunction. And if you prioritize keeping your family safe, then yeah, you should pick up the phone or email or whatever it takes and talk to your representatives and let them know that you are concerned about the cutting and slashing within NOAA and the Weather Service, and that we deserve better.
Otherwise, the next time you get on a plane and every time after that when you're nervous, you should be. And for the 90 million people that chose not to vote, you should get really nervous because you own this as well.
Actions have consequences. Yeah, by sitting on your hands, you've enabled this.
Yeah,
So-
nothing changes without asking for change, and a social media post is not change. You've been listening to two old guys on a porch waiting for their lemonade to be delivered. Actually, it's not the case at all. This is all legitimate, factual information, except for a couple of stupid comments I made. But I hope people will pay attention to it, because not only are you one of the funniest people I know, Paul Douglas, you're also one of the smartest people I know. And I know you prefer the funny to the smart, but I'm sorry, you're really smart too.
No, it's very kind of you, but my kids, I've started 7 companies, and in spite of that, I have 2 boys, and on occasion they'll take me aside and they'll say, Dad, 2 options here. You're either the smartest dumb guy on the planet or the dumbest smart guy. You're my flesh and blood. Really, this is how you really think of your old man. But I've been fortunate. I've been blessed. I've surrounded myself with people way smarter than I am. I've had some good timing and some bad. But, so much of life is being in the right place at the right time. And I appreciate what you do every week here, Steve. And
Well, it's nice.
Keep it going.
It's live from my office, and join us for Anything But Politics. Special guest, Paul Douglas. He and I will be wearing remarkably similar outfits to what you're looking at right now. And join us early on the final week in May for that episode, as we just kick around stuff and we really say stupid things together.
Yeah.
Thank you, Paul. And by the way, can we follow you on social media? Can we follow you home? Is there anything you want to plug?
MySpace is still my favorite place to hang out.
You hipster.
Can I give you my AOL email address? No, I'm still on X. Although why, I'm not sure. I mean, there still is, useful information on there.
And you should go there, because when you do post, you post about things that people should know.
Well, I don't post about politics. There are enough people screeching about politics. But I do post about weather and share things that I find interesting. So, yeah, P. Douglas Weather on X, and also on Blue Sky, P. Douglas Weather. So, yeah, appreciate that, Steve.
And that's why I'm wearing this hat, because we all are hoping to survive 2025.
Amen.
Get yours, survive2025.us. T-shirts available as well.